In this week's Technique Tuesday video, I'll demonstrate the star toe of 4 points from Weldon's Practical Stocking Knitter. As always, if you'd like to jump right to a specific point in the video, there are direct links down in the description. This is a simulation of a sock toe knit with the star toe of 4 points. So what's nice about this particular sock toe is how rounded it is at the end. And in addition, there's no grafting. So this toe is decreased down until there are only 4 stitches remaining, which are then fastened off in the same way that you would fasten off the crown of a hat. Rather than using knit decreases, this toe uses purl decreases. There are purl 2 together, and there are also purl 3 together. And it's those purl decreases that form the outline shape of this little point. There are 4 of these pointed wedges in the sock toe, which is why it's called the star toe of 4 points. So this is what I'm going to show you today. So we're going to start by working round 1, which establishes the location of these purl bumps. So we have a single purl bump placed 4 times around this first round, and after that we're going to split off, and you're going to have 2 sets of purl bumps that move further and further away from each other. So for the first round, we're going to knit 15 stitches and then purl 1, and we're going to repeat that all the way around the round. So I've worked at 15 stitches, and now I'm just going to purl 1, and then again I'm going to knit 15 and then purl 1. So I'll be knitting the rest of these stitches and then just purling the last one. And then you're going to repeat that for the second half of the round. So now that we've worked at this initial round 1, we're going to work 4 rounds where all we do is knit. Okay, I've done my 4 rounds, and if you're not sure, if you lose count of how many plain rounds you've done, you can take a look at your purl bump that you established in round number 1, and you look at the stitches that are above it. So if we look right here, we can see that there are these 2 angled legs that form a V. That's the row above it, so that's 1 row. Here's another. These 2 legs are the second row. And this is the 3rd row, and then we have got a 4th row that's below the needle. The stitches that are on the needle are not stitches yet, or they're not knits or purls yet, so we don't count those. We count what's between the purl bump and the needle, so we can see that we have 4 rounds. The instructions for round 6, which is the first actual decrease round, is purl 2 together, knit 11, purl 2 together, knit 1. So we're going to purl these first 2 stitches together. And then we're going to knit 11. So what we see here is we've got that purl stitch, that initial purl stitch, and that follows this column up to here. And now it's time to purl these 2 stitches together. So we're purling together the 2 stitches that are before that column where the original purl stitch was. So this purl stitch is to the right of that purl column. And then we're just supposed to knit this stitch. And then we repeat what we just did. So we purl these 2 together, knit 11, purl 2 together, and then knit 1 again. So what we're doing is we are creating those decreases in the stitch that's just to the right and just to the left of the original column of purls. Once again, I'm going to knit 4 just plain rounds before I do my next decrease round. So I've finished my 4 plain rounds, and now it's time to do the next decrease round. So this decrease round is again going to move the purl bumps, these 2 sets of purl bumps, closer to each other and these two closer to each other. So we're going to have more space in between here and less space in between here. So the instructions this time are to knit 1, then purl 2 together, and this time it's knit 7. And what you'll see is that this puts us where we're going to be. This is where that purl bump last time was in this column right here, but we're going to be purling these two together. So we're purling the two together that are before that previous purl bump. And then we're supposed to knit 2. But now we need to do the next repeat, which is to knit 1 and then do purl 2 together. So we actually have 3 knit stitches in between these 2 purl bumps here. So I've done that purl bump. Now knit 7. Again, we can see that these 2 stitches are going to be in front of this purl stitch column. And then we knit the last 2 stitches, and then we repeat for this half of the round. So we finished this decreased round. Once again, we're going to knit 4 plain rounds. This third decrease round starts with a knit 2. We did the first decrease round by starting with a purl 2 together. The second was knit 1, purl 2 together. Now we're going to do knit 2, purl 2 together. And this time we are only going to knit 3 before we do the next purl 2 together. And then knit 3. And that finishes that repeat. But now we do a knit 2, purl 2 together. So the end of a repeat always has 1 knit stitch more than the beginning of the repeat, and that's because that's where that original purl column was that we started with. This is the point in the sock where things change. The decreased round that we're going to work this time is going to form each of the points of the star. So instead of doing 2 decreases that are each a purl 2 together, we're going to do 1 decrease in the middle here, and it's going to be a purl 3 together. So we're going to be doing 1 double decrease instead of 2 single decreases. This is also the round where we're going to end up with half as many stitches as we started with. So I'm going to work a knit 3 in this row. Start with a knit 3, and then I'm going to do a purl 3 together. And then I have a knit 4 to finish the repeat. So that finishes that repeat. And now I do a knit 3 again. And then I do a purl 3 together. So I'm going to work these 3 stitches together. And then I end with the purl 4 or a knit 4. So this is forming that point of the star right there. And then I'm going to repeat that for the second half of the round. So I now have half the stitches I started with, and the toe is actually fairly long at this point, but this is where we eliminate those plain rounds. So from now on, we're going to be continuing to decrease every single round. So this time I'm going to knit 2. And now I'm going to purl 3 together, and that previous purl 3 together is always going to be in the center. So I know which 3 stitches I'm going to work together because I can see that this one is marking the center. So I'm going to repeat this process until where I am purling 3 together wherever the previous purl 3 was, that will be in the center. I'm going to keep doing that until I have 8 stitches remaining. And what this is doing is it's creating, we have this wedge that comes together, and then we're creating these vertical lines of purl stitches right here. So I have needles with very sharp tips, and that helps me insert the needle into all 3 stitches, but I have a kind of splitty yarn, and so that is creating a problem. So one thing that you can do if you're having trouble with purl 3 together is you can slip the first 2 stitches, you can just purl the 3rd one, and then you can pass these 2 over. You can do it one at a time. Or you can do them both at the same time. My yarn is so splitty. There we go. So I'll show this to you one more time. So the yarn is in front, and you're going to slip the first 2 stitches as if to purl, so you're maintaining the stitch mount. Then you just purl the 3rd stitch, and then you can, let me get that out of the way, then you can pass those other 2 stitches over the one that you actually purled. So if you have splitty yarn or you're having trouble doing it, that's an alternative. So now I'm down to 8 stitches. I'm going to work one final round where I'm just going to purl 2 together. So I'm going to do purl 2 together 4 times, and that will leave me with 4 stitches. So the final step is just to cut the working yarn, thread your yarn needle, and to fasten the stitches off. So you do this just like you're finishing the crown of a hat. You slip the stitches onto a yarn needle, and you pull the yarn through, and then you just cinch it up. Insert the needle down through the center to pull it through. And then you weave in that end. So when it comes off the needles, it's really kind of three-dimensional in shape. But after it's been washed, and certainly when it's worn, it's going to conform to the foot in a more round shape. So I have the directions written here for a 64-stitch sock, so it shows what the first row instruction is, how many stitches that you will actually have on the needle when you are done with that row, and then you are to knit how many rounds you are to knit plain. That's 4, so that will have finished the 5th round, and then the instructions that you are to repeat every round after that. So it gives a total number of rows rounds that this toe is worked, which is 25. So if you are working a sock that is 64 stitches, starts out with 64 stitches, you should use your row gauge to determine how many rounds you actually need to knit for your toe. You may have short toes, or you may have really long toes. So you measure the toe length that you actually need for your sock. Let's say you need something that is 2.5 inches, and then by this time you've knit the entire sock, so you should be able to find what your row gauge is. So let's say you are getting 11 rounds per inch, and you want to multiply that out. So you need something that's 27 or 28 rounds long, somewhere between that. So, and this is giving you 25 rounds. So you will need to add 2 or 3 rounds to the length of your sock. One place that you could do it is between these decrease rounds where we don't have any decreases. So you could do a single knit round right here, and potentially even right here. I wouldn't put one between the last 2 rounds. So if you needed more than that, then I would start adding them in this area. So likewise, if you discover that you need fewer rounds than 25, then what you should start doing is taking them away from here. So instead of 4 rounds, you do 3 here, and you just keep reducing each one of these down until you have the number of rounds that you actually need to get the length of toe that you need. The sample I knit today started with 64 stitches, but the star toe of 4 points will work with any multiple of 8 stitches. I've included a link to a document down in the video description which has the toe instructions for a range of stitch counts, including how to set up the toe if you do not have a multiple of 8 stitches. If you have any comments or questions about today's video or suggestions for videos you'd like to see in the future, you can leave those down in the comments below or join the discussion in my Ravelry group, Rox Rocks. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next week.